And we're live. This is the Ask a Hero series, and we're here with John Hughes of Fisheye, and we're going to be talking about Bluefoot and content management. I'd noticed, John, that you'd given several talks on Bluefoot. I think a lot of people are interested in content management right now, so I thought it'd be a great topic. We put out a post for questions around content management, got a ton of questions. So we're going to go through all those. So how's it going, man?
Yeah, good. Thanks. Thanks for having me. Yeah, done a lot of talking about Bluefoot this year. So interesting to do a bit more. Yeah, like I said, we've got lots of questions. So yeah, should be good.
That's great. Now, where are you located? Tell us a little bit about Fisheye and what you guys are up to.
Okay, so we're based in Shrewsbury in Shropshire. It's a pretty quiet place in the sort of middle of England. We're a Magento professional solutions partner. We focus mainly on maintenance and support. We also do new builds too. And with the move to Magento 2 in the last couple of years, it was with our first Magento 2 site that the whole Bluefoot thing came about, and we've been using it ever since. So.
Yeah. So you didn't really get into Bluefoot until Magento 2?
No, not really. We did integrate on a couple of Magento 1 sites.
Okay.
But yeah, it's mainly Magento 2, especially from me personally. I've only really worked with it on Magento 2.
Got it.
But I'm aware of the M1 modular, but I have used it and interacted with it.
Awesome. And just before we jump into all the questions and specifics, just big picture, what are you seeing merchants do around content management? What are some of the biggest pain points that you see? What do you think are opportunities for people to do more around content management?
So pain points, I think, it's always kind of been the same. As they always want more control. Merchants want more control. I
think if they're using
Bluefoot,
something like WordPress or something.
Yeah, WordPress is, it's fine. It works. It's just, I think there's quite a few different systems within the questions that we'll get to, but it's always been a case of, it's pretty much always been a case of integrating something else with Magento, which is fine, it's got its place. But if you just want a CMS for Magento and nothing else necessarily, then it's been it's always felt like a lot of work, because the CMS that comes with Magento just isn't quite up to scratch. So
right. Cool. Well, for the first question, we'll just jump right in. Okay. This is probably going to be the trickiest one. Was asked by Marcel Howery. Thanks for the question. Was, when will Bluefoot be available for Magento open source, previously known as Magento Community Edition? Obviously, you don't have any official information on this around, or maybe you do, but I'll just put that out there so you don't get in too much trouble.
But I think Magento have been pretty clear. The Bluefoot, as it is, the extension that's still not part of the core, will never be available for Magento open source. Yeah. Magento
Everybody
CMS.
just left. Everybody just left the Q&A. They're like, all right, we're done.
Yeah, no, Magento Advanced CMS. So obviously that's the what Magento are building in house now. Which is due to come out in 2.3 at some point next year. That is still a little bit up in the air. They've kind of alluded to the fact that there will be some basic functionality in open source, which I'm assuming they will do. I think it'd be a little bit strange to have two completely different CMS systems, from open source to commerce, as Enterprise Edition is now known.
Right.
Yeah, but as to what that is, I'm not sure anyone particularly knows yet.
I mean, it's interesting because because one of the sort of classic opportunities for building an extension for community is to build something that's an enterprise. It's not in community. So it's almost like maybe there's an opportunity there for somebody to take the enterprise functionality and build something for community, because that's usually one of the standard ways that those gaps tend to get filled.
I think that's the key as well, actually. I think depending on what is in open source, I'm hoping we get kind of the Magento Advanced CMS, the kind of the Bluefoot framework, if you like, in open source. Maybe just not all the widgets, if you like, all the different content types. And if that's the case, then I think you'll definitely see A lot of third-party extension developers developing those widgets to sort of add in what Commerce Edition will have out the box. So it'll depend. I'm sure there'll be some features that aren't just around different content types. It'll be different between open source and commerce, but
Totally.
obviously just speculation. But yeah, I think that would probably be the way to see it going.
Totally. Awesome. All right, jumping into, I'm going to skip one of the here in our list. The next one, why would you use Magento CMS over integrating a full CMS for your solution, for your sites, such as Prismik.io, or the other solutions that are available? So obviously there's a ton of other solutions. We got a few questions about specific ones like Adobe, Prismik, and a few Typo3, a few others. So some of those we'll address in other questions. But we got this question from Alexander Ford on LinkedIn, and so maybe we can respond specifically to Prismik or some of the others.
So Prismik is kind of it's almost like a headless CMS is the way I see it. It's kind of it's a very DIY solution, but it's very powerful.
Right.
So this, and along with maybe Typo3 as well, and some of the others further down, their power over Bluefoot's going to be when you want to manage content for multiple platforms, not just Magento.
Right.
So at the moment, if you use Bluefoot, it's in Magento. Getting that content somewhere else is not particularly easy. Again, I think Magento Advanced CMS will hopefully resolve some of those issues. The idea is to have a bit more portability around content. It'll be sort of flat HTML generally with Magento Advanced CMS, I've been told. Mm-hmm. Very reliably by Dave McCauley, but obviously that might be subject to change, but that is the kind of the concept they're going for, so it should be more portable. So yeah, Prismik, it's time and budget as well as the kind of the multi-platform side of things. It's you've got to
Prismik is an interesting one where, like you said, headless is a good way to describe it, where you go in, you have a content dashboard, and you put in your content, and then you API that out to wherever you want to put it, which is kind of a very flexible idea as a developer. I actually remember playing with this back when I was in-house with a merchant a little bit, and it's a really neat idea, but depending on how easy it is to get into get it into the platform. So, I mean, Magento CMS really works well. You're a Magento merchant. Maybe you have a WordPress blog or something like that you've been stitching together. And we'll talk a little bit about how to handle blogging a few questions down. But really, that's all. Those are really the only places you need your content. So that's where Bluefoot can be a great fit.
Yeah, essentially. Yeah. So yeah, again, things like Prismik and the others, you've got to think about the integration. One thing to note would be, Bluefoot comes with e-commerce specific content. You can just drag in a list of products from a specific category. You're not going to get that in Prismik or Typo3 without integrating that. And obviously, you've got to maintain and support two systems potentially as well, depending on Prismik's a bit different, but something like Typo3. Obviously, you've got to I believe it's generally you host it yourself. So you've got to maintain that, keep that up to date as well.
Right. Which brings us, brings us into our next question from Ronald Mewison. Hope I pronounced that right. What about integration with enterprise open source Typo3? We did an integration called MATE, I guess is how you pronounce it. Would love to hear John's view on this. We believe it fits in the commerce and content picture perfectly and fills a nice gap. You've already started to talk a little bit about some of the differences with Typo3, but we can kind of expand a little bit.
You got some of the same pros and cons again as before. If you want multi-platform content, it's going to be better than Bluefoot. If not, then maybe not so much.
Makes sense.
So yeah, I haven't used Typo3. I've had a quick look at it. I know it's popular in like Germany and Netherlands, that kind of area.
Right. Yeah, the Germans seem to be really big into Typo3.
Yeah, they do. Yeah. One thing I will say, I'm probably get all the Germans and Dutch Magento people are going to hate me now. But,
right. bunch of down thumbs on it.
It's not a particularly pretty UI. It looks a bit dated. That's my main criticism of it. Obviously, from a developer point of view, it doesn't really matter. From a merchant point of view, it doesn't look that modern. But it's not to say it's not a great system. It's just so Bluefoot's obviously drag and drop, and Magento Advanced CMS is going to be all drag and drop. It does look a little bit older style.
Germans and Dutch people, send your hate mail to JOHNH at no, that's totally fair. Now that brings us into Adobe AEM. This question came in from Tom Sloan. With the Magento tie-ups with Adobe AEM is Adobe Experience Manager.
Yes.
Yes.
The one
and Acquia. What are the limitations of Bluefoot and/or these partnerships purely to offer choice in the enterprise versus demandware, Hybris, etc.? Again, you've already talked a little bit about some of the major differences there being multi-platform. But what do we want to say specifically about Adobe?
Specifically about Adobe, I think we're kind of comparing apples to oranges here. It's, you've got, starts at like $100,000 a year plus. It's a completely different, target market. Is there for the demandware, Hybris, high-end stuff. I think for those kind of people, those sort of merchants, Bluefoot will be limiting. So yeah, maybe Magento Advanced Commerce might help in that regard again with a multi-platform, but yeah, I just think they're very different. And I think it is in the question they noticed about the choice. It is about the choice. I think that's the thing. I think Magento have partnered with these guys obviously, so they look more appealing to the high-end enterprise side of things. So yeah, Bluefoot's not really going to be able to touch those two in terms of full features and all that kind of stuff, but it's not really what it's for.
It's just for a different segment of the market, most likely. Don't have to. I mean, we don't have too many details to dive into. It'd be interesting to look at if there is maybe some overlap between a merchant that's considering them. It might be interesting to see if there's some feature by feature comparison to drill further into. But like you're saying, it sounds like they're just really going after a different segment of the market. So the next so the next question is kind of actually came in over email, and they were asking how client friendly is it versus developer friendly? Can a merchant, non-technical merchant, just go in, use it pretty easily themselves? What are the types of things where you start to need to get your developers involved?
Okay, so out the box, it is pretty client friendly, and there's plenty of content types there you can drag and drop. There's plenty of styling that comes with it. I think that's one of the questions later on as well. But in terms of developer wise, it is very developer friendly. I'm obviously going to say that because that's what I've been talking about all year. Been doing talks this year about adding new content types to Bluefoot. So when I say it's developer friendly, to be honest, when you add new content to Bluefoot in its current state, it's more configuration over code. It's install scripts with data, just setting the right attributes that you want in the right place.
Okay.
Little code depending on the kind of complexity of the content type, but yeah, I'd say it's developer friendly. I think some things I've heard people say when I've done talks and things is obviously there's no documentation. They never got around to doing the M2 documentation before Magento acquired it. So got it. Yeah, I've never had time to really do a full blog post or anything on on my talk, which probably would be useful at some point. But yeah.
Do do your what are some of the things that you like, even with your own clients, that you see them that are truly just able to do completely themselves, versus, because sometimes clients, like, there's something they could do themselves but they still ask you to do it anyways, just because there's maybe a mental block there or something like that. But what are some of the things that they like, pulling a product list onto a category page or modifying content on category pages? Like, what are some of the things that your clients are just able to do completely themselves?
Okay, so yeah, because it's drag and drop now, it's a lot more client friendly, a lot easier. So actually, for our sites, the way we've taken it, for example, we've ripped out the footer, and the footer is built in Bluefoot now. They can control the whole of the footer, whatever they want into it. Potentially completely break the whole thing, but
nice.
It's a bit of a balance, if you like. But yeah, you can like the example of dragging a product list onto a category page or anywhere else. There isn't really a need once we've done our bit. There's still styling front end involved in terms of making sure it fits in with the theme and that kind of stuff. But yeah, they can do pretty much whatever they like. It depends on the content type that
Right.
you've got in there out of the box, or if you add new ones, we've built things like a list builder, so you can now add lists. We've used it to kind of replace some of our navigation menus, so they can have full control over that without any real issue. So that means their navigation menus don't have to be just made up of categories. It can have links to pages, links to products, custom links. So
nice.
Yeah.
I think we've definitely all done our fair share of modifying, top nav links, footer links, footer content manually. So that's pretty. And do they do it purely themselves, like nav links, like all that stuff? Like they don't break things and.
We've not really had anyone break anything yet. I think the only time where we've experienced that, and not necessarily in a production environment, it's just more of a testing thing, especially before launching a site. It's just there is a tab in every Bluefoot content type where you can add custom CSS classes and a few metrics. So sometimes there is a need for us to put custom classes on certain content elements.
Right.
And in those cases, if a client swaps it out with another and they forget to put the class on, there are little things that can thing.
Right.
As long as they've got a generally, got a decent understanding, and we've been through with them how it's all put together. So yeah, they could generally, for the most part, they can put whatever they like wherever they like. That's kind of the point.
And like, what are the types of things where you do start to run into needing help from developers? What are some examples of things where they start to run into some of the limitations?
I'd say the limitations of Bluefoot at the moment is when you want complex layouts. So obviously with Bluefoot, you can drag in you can add as many rows as you like, and then you can add columns within those rows. If you want to start nesting things further, if you wanted a column, so you've got a column in a row, and then maybe you want another row in that column, that's something that Bluefoot can't really do at the moment. Mm-hmm. Something I believe Magento Advanced CMS is going to solve, or I hope it will do. So yeah, those are kind of when you've got a really highly custom like landing page layout, that can be a bit tricky. But yeah, generally we've not run into too many kind of issues. I think for the most part, obviously at the moment, most of our Bluefoot usage has been with building new sites. So we've obviously tackled most of these issues during the build. So once we get to launch, they're kind of happy with what they can and can't do. So it's not we get the odd request for new things,
right,
following launch, but generally.
Right. Do you find that in terms of talking about the process of going through a build, and even before that, the process of pitching, I've heard a lot of people say that having these content management features is really helping people win deals when they're pitching clients. Are you seeing that? Do clients really get excited?
Yeah. Yes. So I actually, I think it was on Twitter last week, I've nicked a couple of quotes from Philip and Brian, obviously your co-host on Mage Talk and of Future Commerce. It's from Mage Talk Live, Imagine. They both talked about how it would help them sell Magento better and speed up build times, and something we've seen too. Yeah, I've become a bit of a pro. I've been dragged into a few sales pitches demoing Bluefoot. So yeah, it does tend to impress merchants from what the merchants we've been to see, at least anyway.
Nice. So actually finally just popped into our live chat. We've got some questions that have come in, so we'll just do some of these on the fly. Got a question from Matt Walters. He wants to know, can Bluefoot serve dynamic content, for example, logged in users versus non-logged in users, and then how does it work with full page cache?
Okay, so logged in users versus non-logged in users. So yeah, not out of the box as such. You could, you'd probably need to put the Bluefoot content into somewhere else. So obviously, if you're going to talk about things like segmentation, maybe logged in, logged out users, the enterprise feature. You generally use the enterprise banners feature, but from memory, I don't think that has a WYSIWYG editor, which therefore means you can't put Bluefoot into it. It could definitely be done. It would need a bit of a scoping exercise to have a real think about it. In terms of full page cache, yeah, it's another good point. You'd have to really consider that. It more depends on whether it's just those specific little blocks that you want to change per segment, if you like, rather than potentially the whole page content. So
gotcha. Awesome. Awesome. Putting you on the spot here with live questions on the fly. I like it. Okay, we got a question about, integrating with a custom CMS like Laravel. I think we've really already sort of covered that
Yep.
question. December, okay, this question came in from Patrick Swiskowski. December 2016, Magento was acquired the technology behind Bluefoot CMS and Page Builder module, make it a core part of Magento. So why to use an external one? John, so we've sort of already covered this, but if I'm right, Bluefoot will be included in Magento 2.3 Enterprise, so client could wait until the release.
Yeah, essentially you can wait until Magento Advanced CMS comes out in 2.3.
Right.
I think my only kind of counter question to that is, what's the merchant using now? How are they going to migrate whatever they've got now to Magento Advanced CMS versus migrating Bluefoot to Magento Advanced CMS? There isn't really a migration path from Bluefoot to Advanced CMS. Magento have said don't expect one. Right. So it would be a case of I kind of hesitate to call it a migration. It's almost like a replatform in a sense.
Replatforms on top of replatforms. Gotcha.
But yeah, it depends on how much CMS content you've got, I guess, in terms of how much work that's going to be for you.
Okay, so just to show my ignorance here, and I think you already addressed this as like the first question, but I was too zoned out. Bluefoot? What exactly is the difference between Bluefoot and Magento's core advanced CMS product?
Okay, so we're gonna have to get a little bit technical now. So Bluefoot is built on EAV. So all the database tables are split, obviously, like with products and categories and that kind of thing. So every time you drag in a new Bluefoot content type onto the stage area that it's in, it creates a new entity in the database, and the attributes are all linked to it. So stuff across multiple tables. So it's quite a complex data there. Whereas Magento Advanced CMS, I again have been reliably informed by Dave McCauley. Not going to try and get him in trouble, but this is what I've discussed with him. Is to basically EAV's going for Magento Advanced CMS. The idea is instead you're going to have forms in the admin area. They're going to be UI component forms, and I've been told they'll be simple, but we'll see.
Gotcha.
So essentially it'll be form-based data that you fill in, a bit like you do now, but obviously it's linked to EAV, and then you'll have flattened HTML that is actually stored. So say you're on a CMS page in the Magento admin.
Yeah.
That HTML will actually be flattened down and saved as the page content. Whereas at the moment, if you look at the page content that actually gets saved into a CMS page or a CMS block, for example, when you work with your Bluefoot content that you put on the page or the block, if you actually went into the database and looked in the content field for that CMS page, for example, it's all kind of serialized data that links back to the EAV entities and attributes. So it's very different.
Got it. And in terms of the product, like do you buy Bluefoot as a separate extension currently for Magento 2, or like?
No, you don't need to buy it if you're commerce, so enterprise edition. You have a license for it, or if you're a partner, obviously you can access it. You can. It's free to use for anyone with an enterprise license. You can install it by Composer. If you've got the enterprise keys, or you can download it from the partner portal or the assuming merchant equivalent.
Got it. Awesome. Okay. Moving on to the next one here. We've got a question from Tomas Karwatka about PIM Core, which takes us into a little bit the category of PIM, product information management tools, which is, kind of a separate category from CMS. You've got overlap, I guess. PIM Core has some PIM, some CMS, and some other stuff all baked in. So what are your thoughts there?
Again, it does look like a really nice solution. It's not something I've come across before, so I've had a little look into it, but I'm not going to claim to be an expert by any means. Again, I think it's kind of got the same pros and cons as before. It's just got the nice added addition of having a PIM built in there as well to keep all your content, if you like. If you want to call your catalog data, your content, along with your you know, stand what you'd generally call CMS. You know, possibly a nice way to look at it, having it all in one place. So yeah, I think it's kind of as before. You've got the multi-platform approach and the, you know, the pros and cons in terms of multiple systems to manage. So
got it. Yeah. What in terms of the product page, what do you usually like to do content management wise for the product page itself? Do clients end up having a lot of flexibility to modify stuff there? Like, what are some things that some interesting things you see happening on product pages?
So we've had a few requests in that area. We don't tend to, we're not replaced the whole of the product page in Bluefoot, for example. It's still, you know, fairly intact. You can obviously, because Bluefoot can work wherever there's a WYSIWYG editor, you can, you know, like the built-in attributes like description, you can use Bluefoot for that if you wanted to. Generally, it's not. I think the thing you find with Bluefoot content is it's serialized. So if you're going to import descriptions for thousands of products, it's not really an option. The main usage we've had of Bluefoot on product pages is what we'll do is we'll create a product attribute that has a source model that links to a CMS block. So the merchant can pick a CMS block for a specific attribute on a product, and then that CMS block is pulled onto the product page and wherever we specified based on the attribute. So we might have like just certain sections of the product page with nice detailed information, and you know, they can pick from a CMS block, and obviously in that CMS block they've got full Bluefoot control to do basically whatever they want. That's kind of the way we generally used it on product pages for now. I think other people have done some more crazy things in that area.
Nice.
That's kind of, we've kept it fairly simple in that regard, but yeah, we do integrate some Bluefoot stuff onto product page.
Awesome. All right, man. We've got tons of questions coming in on the chat, which I'm really appreciating. Question from Barney Shergold. Does Bluefoot leverage the Magento 2 staging functionality, and can widget changes in the CMS be staged?
Okay, so this is something that we've hit an issue with. So in Magento Enterprise, you've got the content staging and preview functionality on pages and blocks, for example. So obviously, if you're on a CMS page, the default WYSIWYG can be turned into a Bluefoot editor, and you can obviously manage your Bluefoot content on update later. You click on the schedule update, it brings out the panel, and then you get the content editor in the panel, and there's no Bluefoot because it doesn't work. So to get around that, for the time being, it's still on my list of things to possibly have a look into in terms of actually just fixing it. I can't imagine it's going to be a huge amount of work, but in terms of what we do at the moment for the content and staging side of things, it's a little bit of a hack, I suppose, but essentially with the default Magento WYSIWYG, you can insert widgets. One of those widgets is a CMS block. Okay. So what we've done again is we don't always try to use Bluefoot directly on pages. We'll keep things in blocks, and they're more reusable than you can put the same bits on different pages, if that makes sense. It's a bit more modular.
Yeah.
So yeah, what we do is we would put if we just wanted a main sort of homepage landing area, if you like, you know, the main content on the homepage, we'd put that in the block. We'd insert that via a widget on the homepage, on the CMS page, and then for content staging and preview, what we would then do is we would create another CMS block, copy the Bluefoot information from the previous block into the new one. You can do this while there's like a template manager in Bluefoot where you can save the content of one stage and pull it in another one.
Right.
So we then have two CMS blocks, and then the second one we'd schedule the change using the editor to change the block.
Okay.
And then you can schedule that. So that works.
Okay. Sounds a little complicated. I'd imagine with advanced content, the core product, they'll probably try to have tighter integration. Yeah. Awesome. And then we got a couple other questions here. Question from Gentian. Is there an ETA for the 2.3 release? And is there a cost in addition to the Magento Commerce license for using Bluefoot? I think you already addressed the question on the license cost. It's included with Magento Commerce license, but anything you got on the ETA for the 2.3 release?
The only thing I really know and can really say is expect to see something at Imagine, but don't expect it to be released at Imagine.
Got it. Got it. That sounds very familiar. That sounds like right. It sounds like right on. Question from David Stilson. For people that have an enterprise license already, what is the vendor package name for Composer? Assuming that's not top secret.
No, it's not. It's not top secret, because if you haven't got the credentials, you won't be able to get it. It's just Composer require Gene/Bluefoot. There you
go, Gene Bluefoot. Okay, is there a trustworthy comparison between Bluefoot and WordPress via the FishPig integration? Question came in from Michael Shotwell.
I'm not aware of one. I did have a quick look, but we could potentially cover a few bits and pieces. I don't know if you want me to cover what FishPig is for those that don't know.
We're creating the trustworthy comparison right now on the fly. Go.
Yep. Okay, so FishPig, for those that don't know, it's quite popular in the UK, especially in the M1 days.
What is it about the UK and businesses that start with fish?
Yeah, we've got nothing to do with FishPig. We have been asked that quite a few times. But yeah, it's a Magento extension. I believe there's a Magento 2 version now for integrating WordPress into Magento specifically. There's kind of two ways of doing it. It could be like fully integrated and you actually manage you still manage the content in WordPress, but basically it's all the struggling for the words now. So the blocks, templates, all Magento based. You don't actually use any of the sort of theming side of WordPress at all, and then you've got more of a semi-integrated where you're just sharing a few bits and pieces here and there, essentially. But yeah, it's a tool for integrating the two. So comparison, again, they're quite different. It's not something, now we're using Bluefoot, it's not really something we do anymore. WordPress has got fairly powerful CMS tools, but Bluefoot's drag and drop. It's got all the e-commerce content in there already.
Right.
But like we've said before, and I think one of the other things as well, there's obviously different ways of integrating Magento and WordPress if you need to, but from our point of view in the past, one of the main concerns with WordPress and Magento together is security.
Right.
So it's just another thing there that you've got to keep on top of, keep up to date. There are tools in WordPress, maybe not always out of the box, that can have a very powerful CMS system.
Right.
But,
got it. Got it. Okay, so talk to us about blogs. I mean, that's obviously the most people that have a blog are on WordPress. That's kind of the natural thing there. Can you use Bluefoot to power your blog entirely? What do you recommend there?
Okay, so it's worth knowing first off that the Magento 1 version of Bluefoot actually had blog feature built in. I think it was called content pages. It never made it to the M2 version because it got acquired by Magento, and I think they obviously just started working on advanced CMS instead.
You're going to make people hate this acquisition more than they already do. You got to ease up, man. Okay.
So in terms of using it for a blog in regards to Magento 2, you need another extension or custom development work, really. There are a few, I think there's some free ones as well, third-party extensions that will offer you kind of more blog-like features where you can have things like, post categories, taxonomies, that kind of thing, and tags, if you like, for the WordPress kind of side of things. Otherwise, you'd have to, you could make a very light blog out of the page hierarchy in Magento Commerce. But it's not quite the same. So yeah, you'd need another third-party extension, and the idea there is most sort of third-party blog extensions would usually have a content editor, and that would usually use the Magento WYSIWYG, and therefore you should be able, in theory, to activate Bluefoot on that and use Bluefoot to power the content for those pages.
Okay, that's cool. So what do you guys usually do do with your clients that are heavy into the blogging?
So clients that have blogs at the moment, we've actually kind of convinced most of them to just keep a separate WordPress blog. We don't, in the past, part of the thing we used FishPig for was to integrate the header and footer, if you like, from Magento into the WordPress blog. So it's like continuity, but we've just kind of created a separate WordPress blog for those that need it, and similar style and theme, but separate, completely separate.
Okay, but now why did you end up going that route?
Again, security side of things, we want to keep WordPress off on a different server from Magento for the most part. It's nice to have it, you know, it's fine to have them together. As I'm not saying WordPress is insecure by any means. Same as Magento, you need to keep on top of these sort of things.
Right. So the convenience of having a nice shared header and things like that, just not worth it for the security concern.
Yeah, potentially, but it's just, I guess we kind of got to a point where we didn't really feel there was that much benefit on having a shared header and footer on the blog. People might argue that, you know, continuity is great, but
it's one of those things you can kind of argue either way. I mean, my blog is on Medium right now, so it's like on a entirely, you know, thing, and who knows whether that's a good idea. Okay, cool. Now, would you, if that blog feature that was in the M1 version was in M2, would you guys be recommending people use it? Was it not feature rich enough to really give you all the features that you need for a blog? What would you do if that was available?
Oh, I think we'd definitely consider it. I didn't really make much use of the M1 blog functionality, to be honest, so I couldn't really comment on it too much. Yeah, we'd definitely consider it.
Got it. Got it. All right, so let's see here. Next question. This is sort of a duplicate. Daniel Vasquez Lopez. Does Bluefoot give absolute independence to the marketing guys creating content, or is it necessary for front end to support when creating a complex CMS? So we already pretty much answered that one. I probably should have gone through and deduplicated some of these questions. Next one, Matt Skrabanek. My customers love Bluefoot and want it everywhere. Will it be integrated with product descriptions, banners, basically everywhere that has a rich text editor today? I thought it already was integrated pretty much everywhere.
Yeah. So anyway, you see a WYSIWYG editor or the admin, Bluefoot in theory should work.
Got it.
I've seen a couple of cases where it plays up now and again, but it's pretty rare. Yeah.
Got it. Question from Oscar's Tons, fellow commerce hero. Can I update Bluefoot content using migration scripts?
Okay, so I was kind of assuming this question was more in relation to updating the CMS content rather than potentially creating a new Bluefoot content type in terms of the development I was talking about earlier. So in theory, yes, you could. In practice, it can be very difficult because of all the AOV data. I guess my kind of counter question to that would be, if you're looking to update your Bluefoot content via a script, is that not in essence sort of what the Magento commerce content staging and preview feature provides? I'm assuming you want to migrate content for scheduling purposes. But yeah, in terms of migration in or out of Bluefoot, it's not really designed for migration of data in or out.
Well, and like I know people that want to control, and I mean the reason for this is because the developers have to be the ones dealing with the content, so they want to, you know, all configuration changes. They don't want their clients to touch configuration. Essentially, anything in the back end, they want to all be versioned through migration scripts.
Yeah, sure. And that's what you want to do. If you want all your content managed by migration scripts and you don't want your client to touch it, then I don't really think Bluefoot's for you.
More power to you. Okay. Question came in over email. What's the best way to get a demo or overview of Bluefoot?
Okay, let's go for it. Go to the Bluefoot website, bluefootcms.com, I believe.
There we go.
Yeah, bluefootcms.com. Still exists. There's a little demo link at the top. Just click the button and it spins up an instance for you.
Beautiful. Oh yeah, I remember playing with this a little while ago.
Yeah, you can just don't know how long it takes to spin up, but yeah, you can still spin up an instance. There you go. Simple as that.
Easy. Piece of cake. Awesome. Okay, we recently went up against other CMS-based platforms in a pitch and lost on the CMS alone. Is there a future roadmap?
I'm not really aware of anything from a product level in terms of what new content types or are going to be included in Magento Advanced CMS over Bluefoot. I know there has been mentioned before that they're looking at integrating some Adobe Creative Cloud like image editing features, so that sounds like it could be quite nice. But the only other details I really have in terms of future roadmap even are all technical. So again, from discussions with Dave McCauley, Magento, it's again the EAV being removed. There's a few other bits and pieces in terms of, like I mentioned, you've got some structural challenges with the rows and columns. You can go one level deep if you like. You can have a row with columns in it. You can't have more rows within that. Magento Advanced CMS should solve that. That's kind of it really, until we get a bit more product detail from Magento. Again, I'd expect that to be something we get at Imagine.
Got it. How much implementation time? This question came in from Roberto Carlos Castillo Medina. How much implementation time will I save using this instead of having a front end team work on it? So when you're pitching, how is that proposal looking different pre Bluefoot and post Bluefoot in terms of how much time is being saved and things that clients are able to do that they weren't able to do before?
So I guess it comes down to what it is you've got instead of Bluefoot. If it's default Magento and you're starting from scratch, it's going to save you a lot of time because you've got multiple content types that are now, usable out of the box. So unless you're going to build or use one of these third-party integrations like we've been talking about, or unless you've got your own suite of CMS Magento extensions you've built, I think that's where it comes down to really, is that's where it's going to save you time. But if you've built your own suite of Magento CMS tools, you possibly could have a similar implementation time, but you've got to have them in the first place. In terms of front end, so obviously Bluefoot comes with perfectly serviceable styling out of the box. We obviously like to customize it quite a bit. We take quite a bit out and do things ourselves, but it all depends on the level of complexity. I think where it can save time as well is if new project comes along or new requirement on an existing one, we'll now want this within our content management system. I would say it's generally going to be a lot quicker to build a small module to build a new content type in Bluefoot versus building a whole new module to add some kind of new content management feature outside of Bluefoot.
Right. Awesome. This question may be a little technical. If I'm building a custom theme from scratch and also want to utilize Bluefoot, but avoid Bluefoot styles interfering with my custom component styles, how do I go about it? Do you recommend stripping out the Bluefoot styles? This question came in from Khalid Salim.
Okay, so whether I recommend stripping out or not is again depends on what use you need for it or not. Bluefoot styles, they're all written in less, but essentially they're compiled down to one CSS file, which is just included via layout XML. So you can just remove it if you don't want any of the styles at all. Equally, you can copy down individual files into your specific theme and tweak them as you like. So plenty of flexibility. Okay, cool.
Yeah. There is a default page builder element for uploading files. The upload is only available for local files. Can it be changed so that I can alternatively select a file or image from the media folder on the server? We're getting into the weeds here, which is good.
Yeah, I quite like this idea. Yeah, so by default, you can drag images into the admin, and they'll get saved into the media directory for you. There's not really any out of the box way to change it so that you can pick from an existing file on the server. Again, I think that kind of, it's obviously a use case, but it kind of it's back against the whole what Bluefoot's good for. It's empowering merchants to manage their CMS. Merchants don't generally, as far as I'm aware, don't want to go onto servers and upload files via those kind of means and then find the file in the CMS system. Obviously, yeah, you could do it. You would need to create either a new Bluefoot content type or edit one of the ones that's already available. Say one of the kind of banner elements. I think one of them's called a driver. You just need to replace the image field with another attribute. You might want to, depend on how complex you want to get with it. But yeah, you need to do a bit of templating work to pull in the value. But yeah, it's not going to be as user friendly.
Got it. Next question came in over email. Can the Bluefoot editor be added to other modules that have text area or WYSIWYG fields in order to replace those with Bluefoot? And then it sounds like your answer on this is that it should just pretty much work out of the box.
Yeah, that's the again, if you see a WYSIWYG area in the admin, essentially you should be able to activate Bluefoot on that area.
Right. Let's see. This next one might be a duplicate. Any chance to easily extend Bluefoot to be able to add Magento widgets as content element within Bluefoot? I think you probably understood that question, but I'm not sure I did.
Okay, so what they're talking about is obviously the default Magento widgets functionality. You've got widgets you can add already. There's certain content types, but it's obviously Bluefoot. I think they're asking whether the default Magento widgets can be used in Bluefoot. So I guess what I would suggest there is there probably there's not that many widgets that come with Magento out of the box that aren't already covered in some way, shape, or form by Bluefoot. And if they're not, it's not that big a job to potentially build a new Bluefoot content type and wrap that existing functionality in. But yeah, Magento widgets, you've got like a product list, for example, but Bluefoot's equally got a product list. It depends on the widget you want, but I would definitely go with the approach of you kind of need to replicate it in Bluefoot ideally.
Okay. Next one is, again, a little detail came in over email. We have clients who want columns on the desktop to break into different number of columns for lower responsive view, 4-column layout, and then a 2-column layout on mobile, that kind of a thing. Is this possible or being introduced in the future?
So it's possible to an extent. Obviously, Bluefoot has responsive column-based layout already. If you wanted to change it based on a merchant's requirements, you'd obviously need to change the styles, maybe need to change the breakpoints, or just change the number of columns within certain breakpoints. But in terms of, I think part of the question was alluding to whether there's a GUI for it, the graphical user interface. No, there isn't any kind of. It's not a system where merchants can kind of click between mobile, tablet, desktop views and change the layout themselves in the CMS, if you like. It's got to do that. It's any front end developers can have control over that at the moment.
Got it. And then if the widgets do not have all the features needed, can they be swapped out with alternatives so we're not using multiple similar solutions?
Yes, so you can actually just turn off certain content types, also known as page builder blocks in Bluefoot. So if you don't like the default slider, you could go in and turn it off. And in terms of swapping them out, yes, again, you've got to build them obviously, but this is a lot of what we do. So the kind of customizations we've made. So by default, there's something called a driver in Bluefoot, which is basically just a simple banner, if you like. You put an image on it, you can put a link on it, and a bit of caption text and that kind of thing. So yeah, we've swapped out a lot of the default stuff with things that we've got a bit more feature rich, if you like. So one of the main things we've done with our replacement banners, if you like, instead of using drivers is, and this probably applies to all the Bluefoot things we build, is we've got the default link is just a free text field. So we've changed the link functionality on anything we build in Bluefoot to allow the merchant to pick from product, category, CMS page, or if they wish to custom link. But instead you can search for a product name, if you like, entity, any kind of entity, search for the name, choose that, and it'll link to it automatically rather than having to, find the product, get the link for it, paste it in manually, all that kind of stuff.
Nice. Question about dealing with CDNs. I'm assuming that your CDN is going to integrate a different layer than anything Bluefoot's going to touch, but any impact on working with CDNs?
No, not that we've not come across any. We're using Bluefoot with CDNs without a problem. Basically, any image you upload, you drag into Bluefoot in the admin, gets stored in the media directory. So it's no different to any other image in the media directory.
Awesome. Question on the live chat from Victor Chiriak. Not completely sure I'm understanding the question, but we'll give it a shot. A general issue with CMS pages is the fact that when more than one points to one CMS page, when the URL on that page changes, is there an easy fix for this inside of Bluefoot, like validation? On big projects, we have been facing this issue quite often, and we use a third-party tool like Site Improve to do the checks. So there's room for mistake. There's a lot of room for mistakes here with content management. I'm not sure I completely understand the question. I asked him to reword it a couple times. If that makes sense to you.
Not quite sure, no. So
yeah, I'm not quite sure. Okay, we'll skip on that one. Sorry, Victor.
Sorry.
We'll try to better understand that one in
Feel
the future.
Feel free to ask me later.
Yeah, it's a little. Yeah, ask us later. It's a little tough to do it live here because you're trying to talk and think at the same time. Question from Russell Huck. Is Bluefoot like a Gutenberg editor? Gutenberg is the new WordPress editor that just launched, apparently with a good amount of controversy.
I'm going to have to take a pass on that. Sorry, I have not looked at the Gutenberg editor for WordPress. I am too focused on Magento these days.
Got it. Russell, you should have asked that question on LinkedIn so we would have had prepped for it. I know I saw some people arguing about
No, I'm aware of the Gutenberg editor, and obviously they've had the whole React licensing debate as well, haven't they? So, but I've not actually looked at the Gutenberg editor from a user perspective.
What is it that people are all up in arms about? I don't know.
The React thing.
The React license.
The patent license. Yeah.
That's the main thing that people are upset about with the.
Yeah, well, they dropped it now. So.
Yeah, Facebook dropped it, right?
Yes.
Yeah, because that was also impacting the Magento stuff. Question from Salo. Will Bluefoot have a look and feel compared to WordPress as far as creating a blog? We've sort of already addressed that on the functionality side of things. On the look and feel side of things, like is general user friendliness of using Bluefoot. Obviously, they can look at the demo to get a feel for that. How would you compare just overall user friendliness of going and managing a bunch of content in Bluefoot versus WordPress?
So if we take WordPress out of the box again versus Bluefoot, obviously Bluefoot, you've got just a sort of left-hand menu of different content types you can literally just drag in.
It's a lot simpler overall.
It's a lot simpler in terms of, I'm not saying you can't achieve these things with WordPress, but out of the box, WordPress is still just essentially an editor.
But just in terms of overall user friendliness of clients being able to go in and like enter stuff and change formatting, just general user friendliness, is it about on par?
I would probably say Bluefoot's probably a little bit more user friendly just because of the drag and drop nature of it. But
beautiful.
In terms of, you can obviously drag and drop things within the WordPress editor to a point, but it's not really a fully drag and drop.
Nice. Right.
Page builder.
Right. Nice. This question, we just have a few questions left here. This question came in from Gary Benaroff. If we've utilized, I think we talked a little bit about migration stuff already, but if we've utilized Bluefoot extensively on 2.1 for a few clients, what will the migration to 2.2 look like? I don't know if that's the same as the question of migrating Bluefoot to Magento Advanced Content Management, or if that's a separate issue.
I'd take that as separate because 2.2 is obviously what was just released in September. In terms of using Bluefoot on Magento 2.2,
got it.
Magento have just released Bluefoot version 1.0.31. So just a minor patch version to make sure it still works with some of the changes in Magento 2.2. In terms of migration to Magento Advanced CMS in 2.3, that's obviously covered that earlier, and that's there isn't a migration path as such. But yeah, 2.2, it works fine.
Awesome. So it's a pretty easy migration then, 2.1 to 2.2.
I haven't done it personally just yet in terms of with Bluefoot as well, but yeah, should be fine.
Good. Got it. What question from Darren Ortzman? What should be the strategy for merchants on Magento 1? Obviously, this is a tricky issue. Magento is wanting to get people to migrate to M2 and build the case for it and have features, because initially, there weren't necessarily that much difference in terms of features for M2. And so it's like, well, why should I migrate? They made some interesting acquisitions that are only available for M2 now. So if you're an M1 merchant with a non-trivial migration path to M2, it's not ideal. So what should be the strategy for merchants that are struggling with that?
So strategy in terms of what it all depends on what they're using for CMS now. Is this kind of I guess it's just a question in terms of how should they think about migrating their CMS content?
They're just asking where they can get a bootleg copy of Bluefoot for M1 is basically what. No, yeah, I mean on the one hand, it sounds like probably the answer is, hey, you got to migrate, but how should they, think through that? Like, what other solutions should they look at? Meanwhile, I don't know the best way to answer that one.
Yeah, I think obviously we've covered quite a lot of the other third-party solutions. All those are perfectly applicable to Magento 1 because they're outside of Magento. So that is one strategy. You could decide, right, regardless of Bluefoot and Magento Advanced CMS, we're going to look at improving our CMS now and using the third-party solutions, so the Prismik, for example, or any of the others. But then, if you're going to go down that route and invest time in that now, then you might as well stick with it when you go over to Magento 2, potentially. So
totally,
I think it probably most of the time it's just going to be buckle down and manage with what you've got for now, and plan for Magento Advanced CMS or Bluefoot, depending on how soon you're looking at it. It all depends on how soon you're going to be migrating to Magento 2. I've had that question quite a bit, and like when I've been doing talks in terms of is it worth using Bluefoot now versus waiting for Magento Advanced CMS, and obviously that question is going to change over the longer it becomes the sooner we get to the 2.3 release, the more difficult that's the case is going to be. For you might as well go with Bluefoot now. But
and like you were saying, even if you're on M2 and on Bluefoot now, there's still going to be a tricky migration path, or like you said, replatform path from Bluefoot to Magento Advanced CMS, right?
Yeah.
Right. So takeaway on that one is good luck. Good luck. Last question here, Matt Skrabanek. How do you drive adoption of Bluefoot for customers who have an extensive amount of content created in Magento already? And is there a migration tool?
So again, no, there's no migration tool, unfortunately. There's not really there's not really an easy way it's not built for importing content into or out of it. Unfortunately, just the whole nature of the AAV data doesn't make it particularly easy.
Right.
And to be honest, there aren't that many other sort of CMSs that have similar in nature to Bluefoot in terms of the fact that they're all, all these different content types. It's very modular kind of thing, Bluefoot. And a lot of other CMSs aren't really built in that way, if that makes sense. You might have a whole landing page of content, but it's not modularly broken down into this is this section here, and it's built with this particular thing. Obviously everything in Bluefoot is in its own sort of widget, if you like, or content type, and they've all got their own specific attributes that deal with just that content type. So it's very, very modular, and you won't find, you're not going to find anything that really fits one-to-one with it in terms of a migration path. I wouldn't have thought.
Got it. Awesome. Well, we covered all the questions. There's about 30 or 33 questions, something like that, including the ones that came in live. So that was a lot of fun. Anything that we didn't cover that you think people should be thinking about, or did we pretty much cover everything?
I think we've probably covered
everything like 2 or 3 times by now. a lot of duplicates in there.
Yeah, I mean, I think if anyone's got if people want to know more about extending Bluefoot from a development point of view, they're more than welcome to get in touch. Like I said, I would love to get some time, and it's kind of the longer I leave it, the less point there is in me doing. But I'd love to get some time to actually write some of this up in terms of example module and how to go about building it. I've obviously got there's talks I've given earlier in the year from like Mage Times Italy. There's a video on YouTube that goes through how to build a simple list builder content type in Bluefoot. But yeah, I think we've covered most of the actual kind of Bluefoot versus other CMS questions and that kind of stuff.
Awesome. Awesome, man. Well, thanks so much. Really appreciate it. Went through a lot of stuff there. My eyes glazed over just a couple of times, but I was able to grasp most of it. And thanks everybody for tuning in. Really appreciate the questions. This will be available, on YouTube going forward. We'll try to also get this written up so we can easily reference the Q&A going forward. And if you have any other questions that come in afterwards, feel free to shoot an email, hello@commercehero.io, and we will try to answer them for you. So have a good one, and we'll see you on the next episode of Ask a Hero. Thanks, John.
Thanks for having me. Cheers.